Good evening, everyone. Oh, you may have noticed I look kind of different tonight, don't you? What? Is it this thing? Think I'm trying to reenact Harry Potter or something? Well, as cool as that would be, to be Mr. Scarhead for a day, minus all the crazy publicity he got, this is actually ashes. And if you know anything about Catholicism, you know that we Catholics put ashes on our forehead on Ash Wednesday at the start of Lent, and then we're in a state of fasting for 40 days, not counting the Sundays. And some of you that are already Catholic may be thinking, Paul, what the heck were you thinking? Why is it that you're showing an outright sign of your fasting here on YouTube when the readings at Mass today were all about when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites who neglect their appearance for the sake of others seeing them? Well, ashes are a little bit different than that, because you have to take into context what it was that the Pharisees were trying to say to the people, like what was in their hearts. You see, the Pharisees believed that their fasting was an outward sign to people so that they could say, oh, you guys are like the most righteous of the righteous. And in other words, they were acting as though they were trying to please God, but in reality, they were just trying to earn their own praise. These ashes, on the other hand, you could say are kind of the opposite of that. We Catholics put ashes on our forehead as a sign that, God formed us out of the dust of the earth. But yet when we die, our bodies turn to ashes. So when Father Tony put the ashes on, he said, from dust you have come, and to dust you shall return. And as we all know, the reason why we turn into ashes when we die is because, as it says in the book of Romans, the wages of sin is death. We have all sinned, so as a result, we all have to experience the sting of death, because that's just the way it works, the whole transmittal of original sin. So these ashes that are on our foreheads are not supposed to tell the world that we are overly pious or that we're like, oh, look at us, we're so great because we're fasting. No, on the contrary, it's actually saying, I'm a sinner, you're a sinner, and we need God's help. We need God to help us realize that we're in need of His grace, which is the only thing that's going to make sure that we can become like Him and do the right thing. So you could essentially say that ashes are, I know me saying this might kind of defeat it, but you could think of it in the future is ashes are kind of like a sign of humility, because what person do you know of in, say, mainstream TV that goes around saying, I am this horrible, rotten, absolutely despicable guy? You've probably never heard that before, right? I mean, what if you were watching Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and Gilderoy Lockhart, who is the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, in that year he said, let me introduce you to your new Defense Against the Dark Arts phony. Me, Gilderoy Lockhart. The only charm I'm capable of performing is a memory charm. I am the world's greatest credit taker. I have modified so many memories that now I have created a false persona. No, that's not what he does at all. Instead, he takes the credit of other people's achievements and applies them to himself. That's pride. And pride is one of the worst of sins. So in this time of Lent, we take the opportunity to sort of step back from pride. We take the time to look back and say, okay, what in my life is keeping me away from God? What is preventing me from experiencing the true goodness that we should have had in the original paradise of the Garden of Eden? And by doing that, we get closer to Christ, and eventually we have this great big celebration on Easter, which is sort of like a parallel of the epic celebration of the Communion of Saints in heaven. So, in conclusion, Lent is, some people say that Lent is a time of great sorrow, and to a certain extent it is, because we should be sorry for our sins. We should realize that sins are not something to be rejoicing over. Sins are disobeying God, and sin also hurts people because sins have social consequences. But Lent is also, in a sense, a time of rejoicing, because by the end of it, we'll have detached ourselves from that which separates us from God's love. And it also goes to show you how great our God is, because if He's so great that He can forgive us our sins, it shows that nothing is beyond repair. That just like the withered tree in the Charlie Brown Christmas special, where everyone thought that it was hopeless, but then Charlie Brown said, you know what, I still see value in that tree. That's how God sees all of us, is because of sin, we are like that withered tree that can barely stand up on its own. But with God's grace, as you saw at the end of the short, it became a gorgeous Christmas tree. And that's what God does to us. When we turn to Him, we no longer have to be the shriveled tree. We can be a great big Christmas tree. So with that being said, I hope you hold fast to your Lenten fast, no pun intended, that you will have a very fruitful season. And if this isn't the season of Lent for you, when you watch this, I hope that you can take my advice for the next time Lent comes around for you. So, with that note, stay epic, keep the faith, and God bless. Bye.